Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm excited to have Ivan Fernandez today. We are very new to each other, but I'm so excited to introduce him in this way. What got me excited about meeting Ivan on a Microsoft networking kind of event was his humanity. And that's why I think he's a perfect guest for conversations about respect. In following him on LinkedIn, I've seen him post wonderful things around how his kids integrate with his business. He's an owner of this business. He'll tell you about it in a moment. So without further ado, Ivan, welcome, and please introduce yourself to everybody.
Thank you, Bobby. It's a pleasure to be on this call with you, and I feel honored that you invited me here to be a guest. And a little bit about me: I own an IT company. We do IT and cybersecurity, but I guess something that's unique to me is I started SBN Networks right out of high school. I didn't really have a marketing plan or a business plan. I just hustled, knock on doors. I offered IT services. I would tell clients I would fix anything that plugs into the wall. And 24 years later, here I am today as owner of SBN Networks. We have about 17 employees now, and we provide IT services mostly here in Southern California. But we do have clients out in New York, in Colorado, Washington that we do services for. But that's really a little bit about me so far.
I love it, Ivan. Congratulations, man. You know the stats, right, on small businesses,
Oh
that
yeah,
very few make it. So really, I mean, I'm literally getting goosebumps. I'm so excited to have you and
thank you.
hear your perspective on respect because, I'm really, my job is to bring to our audience a range of people because it's such a simple topic, but it's also deeply, I think, personal. And so to hear different perspectives on respect is what I'm excited about in this sort of research effort. So Ivan, let's open with, how do you define respect, Ivan?
As you were just kind of asking that question, it's a simple and complex question. But the way that I define respect, and the first thing that comes to me is it's something that's earned, not given. Um, but for me, respect just means that like, for example, if I have an employee that comes into my office and they want to speak to me, how I show respect is I look away from my screen and I'm engaged in that one-to-one conversation, right? Um, Little things like that, subtle things that you show that you care about that person, really, I think comes a long way. If you're and I guess people would also feel disrespected if they're talking to you, you don't have their full attention, right? Um, I think another thing for me of how I define respect is following up with what you're going to do. So if you state you're going to do XYZ, that you follow up through it, that you're consistent with your actions. And also if you don't follow through with it, that you're upfront about it and saying that, hey, you know what, I dropped the ball. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a little bit behind on XYZ, but I'm going through these issues. But I guess the key there is transparency. And that's really it. I think for me, it's the reason I think I've been really successful is because I respect my vendors, I respect my clients, I respect the workplace, I respect my employees. And I think everyone in general, of all the things that I just named, they all have their own bars of what respect is. And as long as you're shooting higher than what their bar is, it just cultivates a beautiful relationship with who you work with, who you engage with. Because I think we all have our own personal core values, right, of what we want and don't want in our lives. Um, but that's what I got so far.
I love what you got. You got a lot there, and it's brilliant. Let me play back a bit of what I'm hearing, Ivan. So I love that opening piece around turning away from your monitor when somebody walks in. I can't tell you how often I think most senior leaders, owners of businesses, do this unconsciously, but they tend to forget their power differential. I mean, look at you. You've created this company, you've run it for over 20 years. The people look up to you. And so for you to have the respect to really give them their full attention, brilliant. Congratulations on doing that. And then the ownership piece is so important. Can't tell you how often C-suite leaders and owners just discount that, the rules don't apply to them. But if you want that behavior and you want people to work to really live the values of your organization, you've got to model it. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what I would add to that too, it's, I think with senior management, respect also includes having boundaries in place, right? So, yeah, there is a time when I may not be available. And where I'm getting to is I'll let my team know I have an open door policy, right? You guys have a question, I want to make sure I'm accessible. I think that's also a sign of respect that your voice matters to me, your opinion matters to me. And even, repeating what I heard, right? Like what you just did. It's like a sign of like we're engaged in the same conversation. But there's also like boundaries that I respect for my team, right? I do everything that I can to not try to reach out to the team after hours, right? Or before their shift. Now, there's gonna be situations which I can probably count when I've had to do that. We're in the IT business, so it's kind of expected for us to work late sometimes because we're having to solve some of the world's challenges at times. But I think the fact that I'm present to if I call this person, I might be interrupting dinner time or I might be interrupting family time. Um, that's just having those boundaries both ways, right? And I think my team also respects that. Hey, I'm in a meeting right now, or today I can't be bothered, and figuring out how they can solve the issues their own way. So I think respect also includes having boundaries in place, which are healthy for any relationship or any business.
Absolutely, Ivan. And the way I talk about boundaries is it's respectful to be explicit. There's a
Yes.
lot that we end up in putting in, again, unconsciously in the space of the implied, like, hey, you should know, right? Not to email on weekends. Well, I don't. In fact, that's my example. I'm really bad. I'm 24/7. And if I'm on, I'm, not even thinking of the impact on the receiving end of sending an
Yeah.
email on the weekend.
Yeah.
So that's another version for me of boundaries and agreements, right? Around what are those rules of engagement as a team? What's the best way to reach me when there's an escalation or urgent matter versus, I can take my time to get back to you, just like text me or call me versus email, etc. Slack is used a lot these days, all of those sort of things. They may sound very tactical, but I find time and time again, many teams and leaders don't do that. It's to me, it's like the basic hygiene of a business.
Yeah.
Um,
And I would say sometimes it's a double-edged sword because, like for example, I was reading this book that this business mentor wrote 20 years ago, and one of his key points in there was treat others like you want to be treated. But he tied that into his email inbox, and he said like if you expect to get a fast response from your employees, your vendors, your people you're working with, you should also have the courtesy to respond as fast as you can. And as busy owners, it's sometimes really hard, right? But after just reading that, I was just like, okay, I can do a better job at replying back because it also shows a sign of respect, right? That I respect the email you just sent me, I read it, I sent it back to you. But on the flip side, right, I don't want to be emailing my staff at midnight, 3 a.m., and having that thing go off. So what I do sometimes is I schedule my emails to go out at 8 a.m. So unfortunately, my team may get 5, 6 emails from me right at 8. um, and sometimes I may forget to do that. But I go back to is, um, yeah, you have to be conscious of your team, right? I mean, I wouldn't have been able to build what I have now without the people in our organization who I'm very thankful for. And even respecting culture, right? I think, some people are different religions, some people don't celebrate birthdays, some people do. Um, and, sometimes it gets a little bit more complex as your organization grows. But we're always looking at, respecting, our team the best that we can.
yeah, Ivan, I want to go back to what you opened with here around, let's see, the book you read and what I call the golden rule, which is treat people
Yes.
the way you want to be treated, is I think what he's saying in that book. I'm a fan of kicking it up a notch and going to the platinum rule, which is
Okay.
treating people the way they want to be treated. So for
Yes.
instance, if you're open, I mean, this is, I bet you do it already, but a moment of coaching with that 8 a.m., trigger of scheduling them, perhaps a conversation, and your team's not too big, so just maybe even individually, what's your preference?
Yeah,
Right?
that's
So
true.
you ask, and then for some, it may be just fine that you're sending emails at 3 a.m., and for others, it's not. And then again, a boundary thing, you've got a decent sized team. You need to set your boundary around, gee, do I customize for 18, 16 people, or do I let the team know? I mean, here's the suggestion. Sorry, I'm coming back to coaching mode. Ask as a group, right?
Yeah.
And look for patterns so you can all have team agreements together on how you're going to do that. And then
Correct.
you're respecting that you're respecting the whole team for having heard everybody individually, but you're coming up with some norms for the team, not just for how you're going to model it, but for how they're going to do that with you and with each other.
That's a good point.
you
Yeah,
know, but that just makes it explicit. So yeah, I mean, we're, you know, to everybody listening, this topic of setting team norms is so ignored. I think we do it sort of by default. We do it just by habit, like, you know, your regularly scheduled meetings and what the agenda is and frequency of how often you do those. That's the logistics of it. But what about like things like, I love another example of respect in a meeting is I'm a big fan of checking in and checking out, even a 20-minute meeting. All it
yeah,
takes is something as simple as what's your weather report, not the outside weather, your
yeah,
inner weather report,
yeah,
right? Quickly says if somebody's stormy or sunny or rainy or, you know, whatever, lightning, you know, maybe gives you a quick read and you don't have to do anything with it right there. But as a leader, that's, you know, when you follow up with that individual to check on, gee, you said lightning, curious if you want to share what's going on, how can I support you? Is that fair, Ivan? I bet you do that, right? Kind of
no, I mean,
checking in with people.
100%. I think that's really tied into our own company culture. I mean, we're still at the size where um, I call it a family style culture, right? I think we're all here for each other. When one of us is sick or down, like the other rest of the team comes together. And that check-in part, it's very critical. I mean, we do that at least monthly. We have one-on-ones. So our managers would have one-on-ones with their employees. I have one-on-ones with the people that I that I manage directly. And the first thing we do is like that weather report. How's it going? And it's up to each party to, maybe they don't feel like talking about it, or maybe they do, right? But at least saying like the way that I start, it's like, hey, this is your meeting. This is our one-on-one. I want to make sure that you have my full attention. How's everything? How's life? How are the kids, right? And just kind of see where that leads the conversation to. And you might find out that there might be something that's bothering them that you might be able to help out with. The other thing too that I always ask is there anything on your chest you want to get off, right? Because a lot of the times, employees hold things in, or we hold things in, and once you get to the point where it just explodes, it's not a pretty picture, right? And so having that monthly check-in at least is important. Um, but I even yesterday, right? I Not to get too personal, right? But I had a little moment when I was talking to my wife yesterday. Came back in, and one of my employees saw me, and he saw my face, and I sat at my desk, and then 5 minutes later he walks in and goes, "Hey, everything okay?" And so it's ingrained in our culture, right? And it's ingrained in checking with each other, and I would do the same. Like I've had a couple meetings where you just know when someone's not all there, or they're disconnected. And so, and it's not that I'm the only one that notices it, you know, between other team members, like, hey, like so and so seems like they're off. We should check in with her. And I'll reply, but hey, I'll check in with her, see how she's doing. So I mean, it's part of our culture for sure. And I think it's important for any organization to do that.
Good for you, Ivan. You know, I was sensing that, yeah, you're doing all those things that are so important. Let's go back to, you brought up like the, you know, different cultures and just different people. Talk to us about how you navigate that regarding respect and.
Yeah. I think from our company, we're very diverse, right? We, I think, are proud to say at one point, I think we're like 40% women in our team, and that's huge for being in the tech industry. And but we're very diverse in our culture here at SB Networks as far as the people that work for us. Um, Not that this is a topic about respect, what I'm about to share though, but um, we had one employee that brought food. I think he's from Africa, and I apologize if I'm messing this up. And but he brought food in, right? Indian food mixed with something that his wife made, and we're sharing food. And that's a beautiful thing. I have another person on my team that always loves to bake goods, and loves to bring in Mexican food that he makes. And so I think from a culture perspective, like respecting culture, respecting food, and different people's beliefs is important. Over the years, we've had people that don't celebrate birthdays, right? And it's something a little bit awkward, but it's awkward for me because I just want to. For me, I want to celebrate someone's birthday, but I understand that it's like we have to respect that, right? Um, but I think for me, it's really about we're still like a family. We come into the office. Our culture is really, again, going back to the family based, sharing with each other, breaking bread. I think that's one of the biggest things that I love to do actually. And one of my favorite things that we do here at SBA Networks is Thanksgiving. I love to put out a awesome spread, and full turkey, all the sides, and just get back to the team. Like sometimes people actually tell me I'm literally like serving them food, but like, I want to make sure like they have a Thanksgiving before Thanksgiving. But going back to breaking bread, it's just really important.
Absolutely. Gosh, sometimes I think in business, we only think of breaking bread in certain cultures where it's the norm. And I tell people, just do it. Just
Yeah.
do it across cultures, do it across, it just really helps to get to know each other. When you feel respect is broken either by you or someone else, how do you get back on track? And what I like to say is, how do you get back in good relationship? Because I do believe as humans, none of us
Perfect.
operate from a place of like, gee, I don't want to be in good relationship with you. I think our
Yeah.
goal, I hope, is to be in a good relationship. So how do you
Yeah.
repair that when respect has been broken?
Yeah. So as far as how to obtain respect again once it's been broken, I think for me it's really about being consistent. Um, and first of all, being transparent and acknowledging that, hey, I failed at this, right? That's something that I've actually been doing with my team. We had a couple breakdowns within the organization. We have a couple key people that aren't with our company anymore. And so some of our meetings that were run very effectively, I'm stepping in to run them. And I acknowledge that I'm doing a bad job at them, right? Because, I wasn't running them before. But going back to respecting their time and respecting the meeting and respecting the organization. So, at the end of the meeting, I basically told everyone in my company, like, hey, like, guys, I'm really sorry that this meeting isn't at the standard that we're used to having them. Going through a couple challenges, as you guys know, but I'm working on wanting to get back on track. And then from there, actually following up with that and doing what you say you're going to do, right? And I think the biggest key here is consistency, which is one of our core values here at SBA Networks as well, is being consistent with that. But I think it ultimately goes down to acknowledging the breakdown, and then through transparency, and then being consistent in your actions.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Again, that ownership, especially by C-suite leaders like you, is such a critical piece around just the authenticity of it, the vulnerability of it builds respect and trust, I think, in everybody. All right, so last question. Top 1 to 3 tips that you'd like the audience to hear in terms of how to keep, growing respect in the workplace.
Yeah, I think for me the biggest one is being intentional um, with people's time, right, and your time. And I guess how I would explain that is going back to that first thing that I mentioned about someone wants to come talk to you, that you respect them, you look away from the monitor, you put your phone down. No one likes it when you're talking to someone and their mind's somewhere else, even in a conversation. So I think really it's being that, hey, this person came to me, or I got this email. Let me focus up on this. Let me give this 100% my attention. And I think that's what really helps. I think any organization grow or build more respect, more credibility. And that's the same thing in business or in sales. Like no one likes to be in a situation where you're buying something, you're selling something, and you're not being heard. Your needs aren't being heard, right? They just want to push paper, get you to sign something. So going back to just being present and understanding, hearing them out, understanding their needs, repeating what they're saying, to make sure that you show that, hey, I understand what you want, and I'm going to deliver on that.
Love it, Ivan. Thank you. And I think also in the opening you shared the other side of that, which is like when that person comes up to your desk, and the boundary piece would be if you're not able to give them your full attention, I bet
Yeah,
you can say, can I get back to you in half an hour? Or,
yeah, absolutely. And actually getting back to them in half an hour.
that's it. That's so critical. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's what, especially with power differential, that's what people are looking for is do you do what you say you'll do, or are you just telling me to do something that you're not following on? So thank you
correct.
so much. Ivan, it's been a delight to have you today.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you soon, and keep doing what you're doing. Congrats on what you've created as
Thank you, Bobby. I
networks.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me as a guest.